Welcome back. Iran under pressure. Tehran taking responsibility for the downing of the Ukrainian jet, sparking protests across the country this weekend. President Rouhani in Iran announced arrests have been made in connection with that crash. In the meantime, European countries warning Iran that they are triggering a dispute settlement mechanism as part of the 2015 nuclear deal that could be a first step in reimposing sanctions. Joining me right now is Kentucky Senator, member of the Senate Foreign Relations and Homeland and Governmental Affairs Committees, Rand Paul. Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being with me.
Good morning.
You know, it's interesting to see Europe actually reacting here. Are we finally seeing our friends in Europe come to America's side in terms of this Iran nuclear deal?
You know, I think it's complicated. For much of the deal, most people thought that Iran was in compliance with the nuclear aspect of the deal, and that's what Europe's opinion was. We pulled out of the deal, and then we've been very critical of Iran for not adhering to the deal. But there's, I guess, a little bit of an irony there that we pulled out of the deal, and then we criticized them for not adhering to a deal that we no longer adhere to. I do think now that Iran is accelerating their enrichment, and they've said explicitly that they're not going to obey the deal after the killing of their general. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with regard to Europe. My point has always been that if you're going to have sanctions and you want sanctions to work, or if you want a new agreement, you have to have some form of engagement and some form of conversation. To my knowledge, our State Department has had zero conversations with anybody in the foreign ministry of Iran. And I think that's a bad thing. I think we do need to have conversations. And if you're going to have sanctions, you know, that's a stick. You've also got to have the carrot. And part of the carrot can only be offered through conversations or diplomatic channels. And so I think we need to do more to let not only Iran, but Russia, China, North Korea, all these countries that we sanction, we also need to have conversations and engagement at the same time.
And you think they will have those conversations? I mean, you look at some of the pictures, even the people are protesting the leadership in Iran as they say, death to America.
Yeah, I think the chance of conversation and engagement is close to zero now. I've been advocating it, though, for a couple of years. Ever since we got out of the Iran agreement, I've been saying you have to have a channel to try to make it better. But it wasn't just our fault. I mean, the Iranian government also wasn't willing to talk last fall when I was trying to encourage both their side and our side to come to the table. They weren't willing to talk. So there's a lot of fault to go around. But I will say now that I think we're at our lowest ebb. After the killing of Soleimani, I think that they're going to see that it would be somehow losing face as a nation to sit down with us. So I don't see that the last bit of their revenge is done, nor do I see them being willing to come to the table at this point. I see mostly that the sanctions are having the opposite of the intended effect.
What do you mean opposite? I mean, Iran's economy, I believe, contracted 9.5%. Well, when you say sanctions having the opposite effect, what?
Yeah. Well, no, I think if the intention is to cripple the economy, yes, that is working. But if the intention is to change Iran's behavior or get them to come to the diplomatic table, I think that's not working. So, yes, sanctions are effective in punishing countries, but really the ultimate goal is to bring them to the table to negotiate. It's sort of like the president's comment, they will never have a nuclear weapon. That's easily said, but I think it's very difficult to have that come about through military means. Ultimately, it's going to require an agreement with Iran, because I don't think you can, bomb away the knowledge to create a nuclear bomb. You ultimately have to have an agreement.
Yeah, and I think you make a lot of good points. I'm going to come back to this because I want to get your reaction to the arrests that were made on the Ukrainian jet down. But let me switch over to the impeachment trial. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reportedly meeting with Democrats this morning to discuss sending the impeachment articles to the Senate. Democrats expected to approve the impeachment managers and send the articles to the Senate possibly by tomorrow. I spoke with White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon this weekend on Sunday Morning Futures, and he said this is a push to nullify the presidency. Watch this. I want to get your reaction. You believe they're not going to stop attacking the president. You want the president to fight back.
This is a continual. This is the nullification project to nullify his presidency. And you see why. They were wrong. They are the appeasers. He's the Churchill figure. He has stood tall. That's why this is the trial of the century. It's about the crime of the century. It has to be big.
So when he says the crime of the century, he's referring to the president being framed. He thinks that's going to come out in a trial. Senator, what are you expecting when you get the articles in terms of a Senate trial and the managers being named today?
Well, I do agree that the whole process has been partisan. Not one Republican voted in the House for impeachment or even for the inquiry to begin with. I think in the Senate, there's a good chance that no Republican will vote for impeachment. That's what my hope is. I think as far as whether or not we have a long trial or a short trial, or whether we have some witnesses or a lot of witnesses, my point of view has been all or none. If they do not allow the president to call all of the witnesses he wishes to call, then I'm not for just sort of selectively saying, oh, to be judicious, we should let the Democrats call the witnesses they want. They had their chance. They ran a kangaroo court. They only had Democratic witnesses on the other side. I think if we want to have a fair trial and have witnesses from everyone, that would include Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and really the whistleblower, because the whistleblower, I think, has pertinent knowledge to the conflict of interest. He served under Obama at the same time that the Hunter Biden was getting $50,000 a month from this Ukrainian oligarch that was under investigation. My question to the whistleblower would be, what did you know about the conflict of interest? And you seem to have strong opinions about President Trump. Did you voice your opinions about the conflict of interest when you served for Joe Biden and President Obama? So those are material questions. And if the Democrats really want a fair trial, you have to have witnesses from both sides. But I also think there's a compelling argument to be made for having no witnesses. So if no witnesses are called forward and no witnesses are approved, I'm happy to just be done with it at that point. But if they insist on bringing all these people, have an axe to grind, John Bolton's still mad about being fired, if you bring those people in, then I think the president should get to bring in anybody he wants to that supports his case.
So will this be like the Clinton trial, where first you will hear the arguments from both sides, you'll have the senators react, and then you will vote for witnesses? How will this play out?
I think that's what we have enough numbers. Basically, 51 votes decides this. The Republican caucus has whipped and asked their members how they will vote, and I will vote just to hear the arguments and then defer the decision on whether we have witnesses to have heard the opening arguments. I think there's a very good chance that when opening arguments are heard, we've already heard these arguments. I mean, they've been presented. It's not like they're going to be brand new. We already heard this happen in the House. We're going to hear them recapitulate what we have already heard one time. They're going to recapitulate it again. Then we're going to make a decision. Do we need to keep going? My hope is at that point that we just vote on final impeachment after hearing some of the presentation of the arguments. But I don't think we're going to hear anything new. And really having dozens and dozens of witnesses, I don't think really helps things. Yeah.
Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much. We, of course, will be watching.